So let's open up with a prayer. Let's take a deep breath. And Father God, we just ask that you open our hearts and our minds to deliver your message. Stay conscious of you. Fill us up with your spirit. Allow me to hear you. Allow me to encounter you. We're all just looking for a relationship with you and establish that relationship on better footing. Keep my eyes open and my mouth shut, and open yours. Open my ears. And allow me to carry your message and not my own. Amen. So we went through some cool stuff. We've been through the forewords. We got a better understanding of where this thing came from as far as Oxford group goes, and where the steps came from, and how the Oxford group was a religious program. We have firm evidence from one of the most, several of the most profound, knowledgeable, educated, in the field doctors that existed, pretty much. And we see what their definitions of us are is kind of like hopeless. We don't get it. Some cool stuff. Some cool stuff happened. I've been communicating with my brother often, man, and it's like what an amazing thing. And my brother has 14 years clean and sober, and I'm over 3, and we've been having this communication and doing some big book stuff, and just reading and things like that, and just some amazing stuff happened, man. And he said, you know what, I got to tell you something, man. And like, I remember looking at my brother, and this is what we're about to go into on the second half of Bill's story. I remember something happened to him, and there was evidence that something had happened, but I was like, I had chalked it up that was for me, that could happen for me. I didn't understand that was something that was available to me, And I remember trying to go out and find him at times and stuff like that, and then had a resentment. He was actually on one of my resentments for, because he didn't come out and help me when I was out there, And then he explained to me why. And I remember a specific incident where the suddenly hit him, right? And we're discussing the suddenlies the last time we spoke, and he was on his way to a recovering event, and suddenly, he's coming to pick me up. I'm trying to get with him, and suddenly the thought came, and he decided to stay with me and get on. And that's why he never came back or tried again to help me. And I was like, man, that makes so much sense now, And then he told me how, man, because we were having this spiritual conversation of this is all I want to do in my life is grow spiritually. I want to get to, I don't think there's I know the people would say there's a plateau, and there's I don't want to believe that there's a limit to spiritual growth. I still have issues with the vape. I still have, I'm talking about the imperious urge, watching stuff I shouldn't be watching. You can put that together and things like that. And it's been difficult to say the least, but it's trying to get better at it. That's just the point. Is just I want to let go of everything out here and connect more and more to him. And my brother is telling me how proud he is of me, and it just had me in tears of what an amazing feeling because I remember when he had it, and I was like, that's not available to me, and now I have it, and I'm just like, unbelievable. I can't believe that this has happened to me too. And I mean, everybody chalked me up, like the doctors and, you know, Bill's story and all the people. The cat ran in the house. All the people in the book, hopeless, broken, and some of us been through the ringer a lot more than these guys, because like they had most of the people that we're going to talk about, especially in the next chapter, like Jim and Fred, which is Ralph and Harry B, and they're real people, and like they were completely hopeless and broken, and I mean nothing, but yet they still had some stuff on the outside. And I remember not having any of those things, and this cat is crazy. It's my baby though. It's the neighbor's cat. I don't care. Let him hang out. So for me to get this, like everyone chalked me up, and my brother even told me, he said, he said, I had to tell you, man, there was no way that I ever seen you getting this. And man, what an honor, man. And it just goes to show that ain't nothing special about me. There's nothing special about the big book and me presenting it or anything. It's all God's work and just information that I'm relaying from information that I got, and like it's available to anybody. So cool. So the last time we left off, we were talking about Bill. We'll kind of retract just a small little bit where the door opened and he stood there, fresh skin. His friend Ebby Thatcher came to the house on page 9. We're in let's start at the bottom of page 8 to make it easier for everybody. So Bill's going through this thing, and he's home, he's getting drunk, he's hiding bottles everywhere and stuff like that. And my musing was interrupted by the telephone. Bottom of page 8, Bill's story. The cheery voice of an old school friend. We now have recognized who the old school friend is. The old school friend is Ebby Thatcher. And he asked if he might come over. He was sober. It was years since I remember him coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. Rumor had it that this dude was locked up and they was getting ready to throw away the key and lock him up for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he escaped. Of course, same thing like I wondered with my brother. How the heck did he escape? You know? Of course we would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him, because he gets drunk just like me. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. He thought he was coming over there to reminisce and bust it up. There was the time, and he starts talking about time and old stories. There was a time we chartered an airplane, completed JAG. His coming was an oasis in a dreary desert of futility. That very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. The door opened. He opens the door up. He stood there fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. You'll recognize the people if you haven't got this yet, right? And you haven't been awake yet, and you're not awake, or you're trying to seek the solution to become, and it's really all about being spiritually awake. And if you haven't had it, you've seen people that you knew that were like, whoa, and you've seen something inexplicably different with them. Maybe a friend brought you or whatever to the meetings. What had happened? What happened to this guy? I pushed the drink across the table and he refused it. What? I'm not refusing nothing. How many times have any of us ever refused anything? Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had gotten into this fella. He wasn't himself. Come, what's all this about? I asked. I queered. He looked straight at me simply, but smilingly. He said, I've got religion. Now, we already discussed this last week, or Tuesday. The Oxford group was a religious program. It wasn't a spiritual program. It was a 6-step group. This is a 12-step fellowship. This is before the 12 steps have taken place. And Bill and Bob developed that. I was aghast, so that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspected a little cracked about religion. We've seen that before as well, especially if you've been and spent some time incarcerated. He had that steely-eyed look. Yeah, the old boy was on fire, right? But bless his heart, let him rant, let him preach. Besides, my gin was going to last a lot longer than his preaching. But he ain't do no rant. He ain't come over there to preach. And a matter of fact, what he told me, how two men, we talked about this last week, or Tuesday, two men appeared in court. One of them guys was Roland Hazard. We're getting ready to go over him in the next chapter. Roland Hazard, one of the guys, was Roland Hazard. And Roland Hazard went through the 6 steps. He's the dude that got in contact with Dr. Jung in the next pages, persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They went in there and was like, yo, let us work with him. And the judge allowed it. And these dudes had big status. We're not talking, and thank God they had like money and prestige, because like we wouldn't have grew without that, some ordinary Joes like myself. They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action, 6 steps. That was two months ago. And the result was self-evident. It worked. There's your evidence for the most part, even though this is 6 steps. I have actually had guys, and I do the book word for word, line by line, thoroughly, and I've had guys get through it in 2 months, maybe 3. I've had guys do all the work in 2 months and going out there and carrying the message. And they're awake, you know. I've got guys that have done that because they did it. It wasn't like, oh, I get a 4 steps, sit on the first part, make a list, yeah, you know, and 2 months later call me and say they got a list. I'm not talking to like guys that really do the work and are ready to do the work, can get through the work. And in 2 months you can be awake. It has nothing to do with time. Like I remember coming in and thinking that I had to have like an amount of time to, before I would feel better and before I like wasn't like clawing through the day and going nuts, right? And thinking about using each and every moment of my life, you know? I'm in jail and I can't think of nothing else. I'm in rehab that I placed myself in because of using and can't think of nothing but using. And it was just freaking so hard. Like the obsessive thought was just so exhausting. And it's telling me if I do this work, I don't have to feel that there's relief. Important. He had come to pass his experience along to me, if I cared to have it. If I cared to have it. I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. I ain't got no other choice. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost, this is exactly how my story went. Of course I was interested when a guy brought the big book in to my rehab that I was at, right? And I thought I tried the meetings and I tried everything else and I tried all this stuff. And when he came and he brought this big book and he told me there was a way out, and I remember asking him when I asked him to sponsor me, I remember telling, it's my man Dexter, man, we're still friends today, and I said, if you're going to tell me to call you for 30 days or read something for a couple weeks, I'm going to be dead. And I meant it. I meant that. But I seen something that happened to him. I knew he was awake. I didn't identify with his story. He told his story. His story was nothing like mine, but he was awake, and I wanted that. I wanted that. I related to the difficulty, the same difficulty that he talked about. And I wanted it. And sure enough, of course I wanted it because I was hopeless. I couldn't stop using even it. I was thinking about, at that very time, hopping the fence from rehab. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays way over there on the hillside. There was the pre-offered temperance pledge I never signed, my grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folk and their doings, his insistence that these spheres really had their music, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen, his fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past, and they made me swallow hard. That wartime in old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are. For that means blind faith in the stage proposition that the universe originated in a sphere and aimlessly rushes nowhere. That's crazy. The whole earth, I mean, if you really sit down, because it's hard, this is important stuff too, because it's hard for us to sit down and actually look around. And I'm not talking about like look around and because we stay like our vision is like right here. We see cars, we see houses, and we think like that's really life. We think like jobs, money, and every store you go to, every place you go to, there are stores that are trying to consume, and consumers are trying to get money from you and sell stuff, and everyone's trying to get something for them to take care of their business and their families. I'm talking about exiting out of all of that. I'm talking about from the beginning. If you don't stop messing with my couch. I'm talking about from the beginning of time, from like trees, plants, the seeds go into the ground, and you can't, there's no explanation on what happens. The rain, the space, the heavens, sun, the moon, the stars. People used to you know how they traveled? By the stars. The stars were a language. They told you where you are. It's like, I'm talking about like really looking at God's creation, how a flower comes up and a bud just blooms into this big, beautiful, colorful thing. You know, I'm talking about that type of stuff. And how could you possibly say it's for nothing? If you really look. That means that blind faith in the strange... Few people really are atheists, for that means that blind faith in a strange proposition that the universe originated in a sphere and aimlessly rushes nowhere. So nothing banged into nothing, creating the Big Bang, which created everything. Nothing came from nothing to create something. And humans are smart, and we create all type of stuff. But we will never be able to create life out of nothing. You can't create life out of no life. It's impossible. Humans can't do that. Only he can. Anyway, it's not my job here. Sorry. My intellectual heroes, the chemists knew it. The astronomers aren't that stupid. Intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, and even the evolutionists suggest that laws and forces are at work. They all agree. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underline all. How could there be so much precise and immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe in the spirit of the universe, who knew neither time nor limitation. But that was as far as I had gone. I remember I used to go in my head, even I used to do this all the time when I was a kid. Well, if God is God, then who created God? And who created him? And who created them? And who created her or him? Whatever you twist it, it doesn't matter, whatever you call it, right? So who created that? And I used to go on all this, and then it was explained to me, like, I'm not trying to do some biblical stuff, but if you go into Genesis, and the very first part of it is like, in the beginning. So there's time. He created time. He's outside of time. So there goes who created him. That's out of the way. It's like, because I was created, I thought that someone else needed to be created, but he's outside of creation. He created creation. You know? In the beginning, there's time. God created the heavens, there's space, and the earth, there's mass. Anyway, I ain't going to do all that right now. Pretty cool stuff, though, if you're an atheist, just to think about some stuff like that. With ministers in the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ. Does that say Christ? Yeah, it does. To Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man. Remember that the whole step process came from the Bible. The Oxford group were just like some Bible token Christians that was the only way, though. You had to do what they did and learn how they learned. To Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man. So when they're trying to give him this thing, he's like, yeah, okay, I understand he's a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, me too, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult, and the rest I disregarded. Me too. The wars which had been fought, the burnings of chancery and religious dispute had facilitated, made me sick. Me too, man. I honestly doubted whether on balance the religions of mankind had done any good. I used to think the same thing. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, because he was in the war, the power of God in human affairs was negligible, and I felt this. We all probably felt this way, man, especially if we was in that position of broken and batterness. I remember being in a car and just throwing my finger up in the sky like, you. If there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. I remember praying. Me and my brother were talking about this. I remember praying to the other side. I remember praying to the other side, man. Like, yo, man, I'll give you my life. Just get me out of this one. Yeah, man. But my friend sat before me, and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. Doesn't say higher power. Even that one, I ain't gonna get into that right now. We'll get into that later. Let's just continue. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Sounds just like me. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Me too. Then he had in effect been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he ever known. And that's what I tried. That's the message I'm trying to carry. You know, all that stuff, it's scary because I don't have an experience with it. But this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I wouldn't want anything else. And people are like, oh, well, I won't be myself if I do that. And yes, you will. You'll be a better version of yourself. And it's scary because you're like, I don't know if I want to be that person, yet you have no experience with being somebody like this. So it is scary. But now that I'm here, you know, I got to tell you, man, unreal. Useful. That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. There was something in work in a human heart which had done the impossible. Remember Silkworth telling us, you know, we can't do what he does. The powers of God, you know, our synthetic knowledge, our fake imitation knowledge can't do what he does, no matter how much imitation fake knowledge we got. Even when you go to the doctor, they treat you for the symptoms, not the problem. Here was something at work in the human part that's done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table, and he shouted great tidings. I'm at a kitchen table and I'm shouting great tidings, and I promise you, it is only by a miracle and grace and mercy from him that I am sitting here at all. I don't know how many times I've been dead, flatlined. I don't know how many times I've been in life-threatening situations, prisons, broken, beaten, chalked up. I can't even explain to you, you know. But my man got another plan. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly, and the whole thing, like, you don't have to believe like I believe or any of that stuff, man, or you know, I don't want to scare anybody off, but I'm just telling you the truth, man. Recognize on my truth. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped new soil. He sees this in his man. He's seeing the demonstration of what's happening to him. Despite the living example of my friend, there remained a few vestiges of old prejudice, prejudgment. The word God still aroused a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea. I could go for such conceptions as like creative intelligence, universal mind, or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of the Caesar of the heavens, however loving his sway might be. I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way. Me too. This is how I came in. I wasn't trying to hear nothing about God and all that stuff, but I knew that I ain't had no other option. That's the facts of it. My friend suggested what seemed to be a novel idea. He said even Ebby gave him this idea. He gave this program this. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? The facts are that every last one of us has our own conception of God. And why don't you choose your own conception of God? You need power. Needed power wasn't there, right? Lack of power is the dilemma. I need power, right? So we're talking about my own conception, not of a higher power. Choose a chair, or just keeping it real. In the beginning, if that's your twist, cool. It'll change. I hope. I'm not talking about a chair or a doorknob or a Twinkie on top of the refrigerator. We're talking about your own conception of God. And we all have our own conception of God. I'm not like I'll be honest with you. I don't like doing this because I do it with my group, and I'm extremely honest with my group, and I tell my group, like, even fifth step stuff, where like my group is like we're all on that, but this is a different format. But I will get honest with you, and I'll tell you, because we all have issues, right? And I don't think masturbation is okay, because when I do it, I don't feel right. And then I don't feel right about it when I do it. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But somebody else might think that's okay. Yet we still go to the same place to worship. We listen to the same music. We praise the same God. Our conceptions is different. But my conception is that I can't do that. And his conception is that he can. Or some people, I wash myself after using the bathroom, right? And people might think like that's... I don't know. I just don't think it's spiritually right not to. And then some people might say it's okay. Our conceptions are different. Everybody's conceptions is different. No matter what, even a person that two people, same church, a group of people, same church, same building, they worship every day. They're doing the same stuff. They're in service and stuff like that. But up here, their conceptions of God is a little bit different. Just saying. Think about it. That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing. It's all I got to do in the beginning. That's all I have to do is be willing to believe in a power greater than myself. I just got to be willing to believe. That's it. That's all that's necessary in the beginning, man. I don't have to have like this full conception and relationship from the door. I just got to be willing, like, yo, I don't know and you do. Whatever you are, I believe that he believes. So let me just try what he's trying, because I'm gonna do it too. Until something happens. Nothing more is required to make a beginning. I know in the second step it says came to believe, but this is the book, and it's telling you all I have to do is be willing. I just got to be willing to believe, man. I saw that growth could start from that point. And being honest, I felt as though I had to come to believe this time, because I knew I was in trouble, and I wasn't objectionable to God anymore, because I was out of options. I'm the janitor with all the keys that goes to the door and tries every last key multiple times before I try the last one, which I know is the key. And then I try it, and it finally unlocks the door. Janitor with the keys. Oh my gosh. I saw the growth could start from that point. Growth can start from that point. This is what it's telling me. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw with my friend. Would I have it? Are you kidding me? You seeing where I'm coming from? Did you see what happened to me out there, man? Did you see when I came in 160 pounds, face sunk in? I was just coming out of a bit. I couldn't stop using. I'm robbing my mom. Of course I want that. Let me get that. That's what we're talking about, an honest desire in the forwards, in desperate condition, the desperation of a drowning man. I want to do this. Thus was I convinced that God was concerned with us humans when we want him enough. Yes, he is. At long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudgment fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. Straight up, I see things differently. Everything. Not all the time, but when I step back and I'm like, wow, man. And I just look at nature and joy and watch people go by and try to have a encounter with somebody at the store. Or I'm sitting here, I was just watching my boy Bucky's doing 25 years, man. He sent me a letter today with his brother and his pop, who made me a Charger fan. I was a San Diego Charger fan, now they're LA Chargers. But I remember I just looked at the picture and said, let me see what Big Buck's doing, man. Let me see what his pop's doing. And call him up, and we just had like a conversation for like 2 hours, man. It's just amazing, man. I didn't see that, and I'm seeing stuff like how I can learn from anybody and anything. I'm learning from the freaking cat wherever he's at in my house. Probably destroying something in my crib right now. Oh, man. New world came into view, man. The real significance. Sorry about that. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. It went out for a second, sorry. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. All the time, man. All the time I can get caught up in the world, and same thing happened to him. Like I want to do this, and I'm cool. And then we do the 1, 2, 3 special. Terrence Butts, you need to get to it. Don't you got work to do? I'm talking about coming out and I get a job, right? I'm getting out of rehab and I got a sponsor. I'm going to meetings. I get a job. I get a girlfriend. I get a little apartment, which really never happens for me. I don't get that far, but I'm just saying I get a couple things, and then I start saying, yeah, I'm good, man. I got some money saved up. I'm cool. I got this. Worldly clamors come up, man. Mostly, or they're within myself. I'm like, yeah, I got this, and self-centeredness and selfishness comes back, and so it happened ever since. How blind I had been. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium, showed signs of DTs. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself, listen to his condition. He sees, okay, something happened to his friend. I'm willing to do this. I'm going to make my own. He makes a brief contact. He's willing to believe. Worldly clamors comes out. He uses again. He's separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise. He's in DTs. He's going through it. And this is, I humbly offer myself to God as I then understood him, as I then understood him. So what's your conception now? To do with me as he would. I place myself unreservedly under his care and direction. We're talking about 1, 2, 3 stuff here. I admitted for the first time that of myself, I am nothing. I ain't nothing without that dude. Straight up. And without him, I am lost. I ruthlessly, listen to the condition and the wording. Wording is important in this book. They're very cute with it. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away. Root and branch. Talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have not had a drink since. my schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list of people who I hurt. What's he doing? He's doing inventory. Made a list of people who I hurt, toward whom I felt a resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Here we go with some step work stuff. Never was I to be crucial of them. I was to right all such matters to the utmost of my ability. He's ready. It's like, I'm willing to do anything. And that's how I came in here broken. And that's how it's most effective. I'm not saying it can't have an effect if you're not. I'm just saying most effective situation is when I come in here on my knees. And I'd rather be on my knees talking to people than sitting in a chair, because that's just what he has done for me. There's no dispute. I am completely out of answers. I don't mean, well, maybe, that stuff is gone. I am completely ruthless, facing my problems, unreservedly willing to place myself in his care. And then I start getting to this stuff, which is building a relationship with him. My friend promised when these things were done, he promised when these things were done, and I promise you, when these things are done, he would enter upon a new relationship with his creator. New relationship with my creator. That does not sound, I'm just being honest, don't sound like a group of drunks or a doorknob. That I would have the elements and a way of living which answered all, what problems? All my problems. Straighten out spiritually, and I straighten out mentally and physically, like the book talks about later on. Like, man, answers all my problems. We're talking, if you came here just to stop using drugs and alcohol, there's so much more that is here for you. There's just so much more so much more freedom than just from the freedom from drugs and alcohol. We're talking about freedom from, like, if my girl leaves, I'm okay. If my girl passes away, and all this stuff happened to me, I'll be okay. I go to jail, I'm okay. No matter what happens, I'm okay. I lose a job, I'll find another one. Like, what a freedom, an amazing freedom, man. Plus enough willingness, honest belief in that power of God, belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility. You know how we talk about the how of the program, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. It's really the who of the program. To establish and maintain a new order of things were the essential, the absolutely necessary requirements. Simply, but not easy, a price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. It means it ain't about what I can get from everybody and every little twist I have. I mean, even when we're sober and clean, and I ain't doing this work and I'm not doing anything, I still have the same problem of, like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to him and he'll give me a ride, and it's like all about me. And I'm gonna go to work and freaking I'm gonna do this so the boss pats. It's always something for me. So the boss, even if it's a boy pat on the back, so the boss pats me on the back, I'm gonna talk to her because I know she's gonna give me some, or whatever. It's just selfishness and self-centeredness. It ain't about me. What am I doing for somebody else and not even trying to get something out of it? Terrence. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must. That is a huge word. I encourage you to circle, highlight, or underline, star, or put a happy face next to must every time you read it in this book, because there's a lot of musts in here. And if you must do something, what's that mean? You got to do it. I must turn in all things. Here's another description of higher power. Things to the Father of light, who presides over us all. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the very moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. I remember that, man. This was the sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity which I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. For a moment, I was alarmed. And listen, for a moment I was alarmed and called my friend the doctor to ask if I were still sane. He listened and wondered as I talked. I remember, and we all can relate to this, right? Especially if we're here and you got whatever, however amount of time, doesn't matter. In the beginning, I remember like, oh my gosh, I remember like thinking like, what? I'm talking about for the first like year and a half, questioning myself like, which one is this the real me? Like, is this really me? Am I really doing this? Or it's like, just like kind of waiting, like, when does that do? Like thinking like I'm just faking it. You know what I mean? Like couldn't even, because I had been that way for so long that this whole thing was new. And I was like, I'm thinking I'm crazy. I'm like, yo, what is going on with me? Is something wrong with me? Like, is this the real me or is the other dude the real me? Like I was getting lost. Man, he listened. He calls the doc up like, yo, man, something happened to me, bro. This is what happened. And he listened in wonder as I talked. Because remember, the doctor's description of people of our variety, the hopeless, helpless variety, is hopeless, doomed. Finally, after he's telling him the story, finally, Silkworth shook his head saying, listen, man, something has happened to you I do not understand. And I highlight and underline that. Something has happened to you. Something happened to me that I don't understand. No one can explain it. Moms, like, they can explain it now because we see it all the time because of what recovery has done for this world and our people. But you had better hang on to it. Listen, something happened to you. I don't get it, but you better hang on to that. But you had better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. Think about your own life and your own experiences, and you tell me that anything, including us describing what we're describing now, which is like trying to get to that belief, doing some step work, whatever it takes, right? You tell me that the feeling that we're describing, that I'm describing to you, that I feel every day, isn't better than anything back there. Anything is better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences. He knows that they are real. Even though Silkworth wasn't like a spiritual or religious person, I believe he might have been after he's seen our work, man. So he came into some more contact with us, as he described in the doctor's opinion. He's seen also different cases from Bill and Ebby going in there and working with others and stuff like that. He's seen it. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. This paragraph and the next paragraph seem a little tricky because in this paragraph, he's sounding like he's the one that developed this idea, even though the sixth step is to work with other alcoholics. However, working with another alcoholic really wasn't the sixth step. It was, but not just an alcoholic. Like the Oxford group wasn't just for alcoholics. It was for like anybody. Like just like we described before. Like you can go into celebrate recovery, and it's like, hey man, I got a problem with depression, and that's cool, man. You're in the right place, and the 12 steps can help anybody, you know. But that's where we're getting off track with. But because Ebby's telling him too, look, and then the very next paragraph, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs, at home, at work, going to the store, in the car. In the car is difficult, I know, but I'm just saying, when we're waking up, we're talking about Bill's story, and this is my story, and he's like waking up, so I'm like, in the car is difficult when you're getting cut off and people are riding your butt and stuff like that, and you want to pump the brakes on them and all that, My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Practically, was it imperative? It is imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. What do you think I'm doing on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and not just Tuesdays and Saturdays, but with sponsees, and I'm not like, this is important for me, It is, and it is helping me. When Crystal passed away, I was working with others, and that's what got me through, man. Faith without works was dead, and like our group knows, like, so is works without faith. So is like doing stuff and not just doing it, That's also dead, he said. And how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if the alcoholic this is important, you might want to highlight and circle or whatever you're going to do with this. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain, big word, it's going to happen, certain trials and low spots ahead. If you ain't out working with others, and you ain't, and just like they say later on in the book, when all else fails, working with another alcoholic, a say-today or drug addict or whatever it is, then faith, if he did not work, he would surely drink, and if he drank, he surely would die. With us, it is just like that, and faith would be dead indeed. It's just like that. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. Check this out. You're talking about God, right? Here's another part where I believe God just intervened. Bill, stockbroker, knows tons of people, very good man, educated, helped people, like he knew everybody, right? We're talking about dudes with status and stuff like that. If I came out of jail 10 years from now, I could get a job. I know a lot of people, and I'm sure someone would help me, at least try to help me. I wouldn't help me, but I would try to help me. They would try to help me get on my feet. Have done it. It's the same stuff. So check this out. For him not to find a job is kind of crazy. I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution to their problems. It was fortunate. For my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. He didn't find no work for a year and a half. I was not too well at the time, was plagued by ways of self-pity and resentment. He was pissed. Nobody would give him no work. We're talking about Bill. How could he not get no work? Guess what he did in a year and a half? In a year and a half, he ain't had no work. Where do you think this came from? It's so cool, man. Thank God. He ain't find no work. He even knows. It's fortunate. Man, sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. But I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I have gone to my old hospital in despair. Went there in despair. Listen to his condition. He's despair. On talking to a man there, I'd be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living that really works in rough going. We commenced to make many fast friends, and a fellowship has grown up among us, which is a wonderful thing to be a part of. Ain't this beautiful? It's unbelievable. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. Even when people pass away and I go to jail and freaking come out and they took all my stuff. Even when like I lose jobs and freaking end up in a position where I'm hurt. Even under pressure and difficulty, the joy of living I really have. This is all the honest to God truth in my life and can be in yours. I have seen hundreds of families set their feet on a path that really goes somewhere. Have seen the most impossible domestic situations righted. Feuds and bitternesses of all sorts were wiped out. This is all promise stuff. This is what happened to Bill. I didn't really want to get into this because I wanted to stay on the first step for the people that aren't familiar with the book and not like tell you, but it's important. This is just Bill's story, and I can give. We all had the description. You hear about this all the time. People did the steps and what happened to them, and that's what the 9 through 16 is about. You know, however, we're doing it. So business and professional men have regained their standing. I have seen men come out of asylums and resumed a vital place in their lives and their families and communities. This is all true in my life. This is all happened to me. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. On one western city and its environs, there are 1,000 of us and our families. You want to underline and highlight this, and at the bottom of the page, you can put why we have a meeting. What is the meeting about? You go to the meeting and you think like I remember I'm sincere when I say this. I'm not being facetious or anything. I'm telling the truth. Like when I personally came to meetings, I thought that I come to the meeting, I heard people share around my area, and I thought like I go in, I talk about, you know, what's going on in my life, and I'll feel better, you know. And I would even hear people, we all hear people at the end of the meeting, I feel better now that I talked about that, you know. But that's not like okay, if you feel better tomorrow, the problem's still there, you know. And I go there and I think that's what the meeting is I used to treat the meeting like it was some form of therapy session. I had no idea that I go there to either carry or receive the message. That's what I'm there for. I'm there to go. This is the truth. We hope that you get introduced to the meeting. The meeting introduces you to a sponsor. The sponsor introduces you to the book and the steps. And the book and the steps introduce you to God. And then you start introducing yourself to others and help them in your selfless Reno Max of kindness. We meet frequently. This is why we meet frequently. So that the newcomers may find the fellowship that they seek. That's why we're meeting. That's it. When a newcomer walks in the door, like not every group is like this, and you know, groups vary, and it's not their fault. It's just, you know, some people are misinformed or whatever. But the group is the most powerful, and I learned this from my brother. The group is the tradition work, the most powerful entity for carrying the message. The most powerful vehicle for carrying the message is the group, the entity, not the meeting, which is the event, but the group. So people go to the group, and I have a chair, and the chair's job is to find speakers, because we have a speaker meeting on Wednesdays. And then his job isn't just to say, yo, man, find somebody outside the meeting, like, yo, can you speak for me? Or let me go get one of my homies to speak for me from the halfway or whatever. His job is important. His job is to bring somebody there that's going to set the place on fire, because we don't know when the newcomer's going to walk in the door. And when he does, which he is going to, we want to be prepared to make sure that he gets the message when he walks in the door. That's why we meet frequently. So when they come in, they hear the message and they go, I want that too. That's it, man. And then listen, you ain't leaving my group. I'm telling you, my group, shout out to my group, you know, outside of this and the 12-step meeting, you know. So we go to my group, man. You're not leaving there without a sponsor, man. And it should be like that with every group. And if that's not happening in your group, then cool. You have a position to be in service. Great. At these informal gatherings, you may often see from 50 to 200 people. We are growing in numbers and power. An alcoholic in his cups and a drug addict in his cups is an unlovely creature, man. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous. We all, if you sponsor people, you know about this. Strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. I've seen a lot of people that I sponsored that ain't here anymore. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. I suppose some will be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath of that, there is a deadly earnestness. We know that we have the desperation of a drowning man. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. I'm going to perish if I don't do this stuff, man. And I don't want to perish. I love doing this stuff. It isn't like, oh, I have to go to meetings. I have to sponsor guys. I love doing that stuff. It's the bright spot of my life. To go to a meeting and conversate with the same, Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. We have it with us right here and right now. Each day, my friends, simple talk. Two dudes talking in the kitchen. Friends. Multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. We're doing it right now, man. We're all communicating and talking through this thing and letting God, like the Spirit, come in and like open my mind to the book, and like not on no ego trip or nothing, but being able to carry a message in a pandemic and do like a book study. Like, man, it's crazy, man. It's multiplying right now. It's multiplying every day, everywhere. People are doing all type of stuff to carry the message, man. So cool, man. So look, that's the second half of Bill's story. Good, that's good timing. Oh man, we about to go into There Is a Solution on Tuesday. Whew, man, it's about to go down. This is now we're getting ready to get into some meat and bones and some muscle in this thing, man, which is amazing. So for the next pages, we're going to go into the first step, the first half of the first step, which is kind of like the physical part of this thing, and what happens, and we're going to describe cement and common perils and why they're both necessary, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about another doctor's opinion over here on 18, and or excuse me, on 18 we're going to talk about what you're looking for in a sponsor. We're going to talk about the types of drinkers and stuff like that. So it's going to be some really cool stuff on Tuesday, man. So I'll see y'all then, and God bless, and thank you for joining, and be blessed, man. That's all.